Hi everyone. Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. Sunlight filtered through the lofty canopy of oaks that bordered the pack's main village, illuminating a bright morning alive with bustling activity. Preparations for a grand event were well underway, and everyone in the Silvercrest territory seemed to sense it in the charged hum that filled the air. Garlands of wildflowers adorned the pathways, and fresh linen draped over wooden tables near the central gathering space. The aroma of roasting meats and sweet pastries drifted in gentle waves, drawing pack members to come and share in the day's excitement. There was talk of alliances, discussions of a strong future for the pack, and, most importantly, whispers about the upcoming official introduction of their next Luna, who had been promised to the Alpha from a young age. In a modest yet well-respected home on the eastern edge of the village, two sisters were making final preparations. Elysia, the older, was the one who had long been destined to stand at the Alpha's side. She was known for her grace and sophistication, the kind of poise that made everyone assume she was born to lead. Elysia's beauty was apparent, but it was her aura of unwavering confidence that set her apart. Everyone in the pack had grown up believing it was only natural she would be chosen as the next Luna, for rumors of an arrangement between their father and the Alpha's father had existed for years, and all signs pointed to Elysia as the promised bride. But the younger sister, Raina, was a stark contrast. She was quieter, more prone to daydreaming on the rolling green hills or sketching the shape of clouds in the sky. Raina found solace in solitude, reading thick tomes about the history of werewolf packs and forging her own path away from pack politics. She did her share of pack duties, hunting during the appropriate cycles, helping in the village's medical hut when it overflowed with the injured or the sick, but she never relished the center of attention. Instead, she preferred to serve in the background, letting her sister enjoy the spotlight. That morning, Raina watched from a discreet corner of their shared bedroom as Elysia meticulously brushed her hair in front of a simple mirror. Elysia's reflection showed eyes alight with excitement, lips curved in a smug smile. The delicate silver gown she planned to wear for the day's ceremony hung from a peg on the wall, shimmering faintly in the morning light. It was the type of dress that spoke of celebration, reflecting Elysia's expectation that the entire event would revolve around her. Raina wore a simpler dress in soft lilac, cut modestly and trailing close to her ankles. She had braided her brown hair back from her face so her features were clear, not out of a desire to impress, but because she did not want any fuss during the day's festivities. Today, she would support her sister, who was so certain that destiny had placed her on a path to become the Luna. Raina, on the other hand, fully believed she was meant to stand on the sidelines, cheering Elysia on. Their father, known to the village as a wise yet reserved advisor, had tried to teach both girls the intricacies of pack etiquette and leadership. Elysia took to it naturally, thriving on the attention. Raina absorbed the lessons with mild curiosity, but she did not yearn for the weight of responsibility that her sister embraced so eagerly. The dynamic suited them. Everyone in the family had settled into the assumption that Elysia would be the future Luna, following the tradition that the strongest or the most strategically advantageous female was chosen to stand beside the Alpha. At mid-morning, Elysia finally turned to face Raina, a spark of excitement in her gaze. "I know you're not one for crowds," she said, carefully pressing down the folds of her satin dressing robe. "But you'll be there, right by me, yes? I want you close when I greet Cedric." Raina nodded, returning her sister's tentative smile. "Of course," she replied, adjusting her hair. "I wouldn't miss it." Although Raina had never met Cedric, the newly ascended alpha, face to face. She had caught a glimpse of him once. He had returned from training in a distant territory about a year ago. Tall and broad-shouldered, with black hair that glinted in the sun. He came to the village center for a brief ceremony honoring new arrivals, but Raina had lingered in the background. Her memory of him was as the figure of strength and poise who barely spared a glance at the crowd. Yet the pack's whisperings painted a portrait of a powerful new leader who would honor tradition. The arrangement with Elysia had all but been confirmed. No one expected any surprises, and certainly not Raina. When the sun rose high, the sisters walked side by side through the village toward the main courtyard. Elysia had changed into her silver gown, cinched at the waist with a braided sash that bore the crest of the pack. Raina's simpler dress fluttered around her ankles. As they neared, the sense of festivity and ceremony heightened, with the air tinged by the melodic hum of conversation and the occasional rush of last-minute tasks. Pack members approached them, offering warm greetings and compliments, mostly directed at Elysia for her imminent role. "Congratulations on this day," an older woman called, beaming at Elysia. "You will be a wonderful Luna. The Alpha will be lucky to have you by his side." Her father, who stood near the front of the courtyard, greeted the girls with a nod, though his proud gaze focused mostly on Elysia. To him, Raina was a treasured child, but not the one who would lead the pack forward. He motioned them toward the wide dais near the courtyard's center, where a circle of elders was already seated, waiting for the formal introduction of the Alpha and his future mate. The dais was ringed by tall banners of deep burgundy, each embroidered with the emblem of a silver wolf howling at the moon, signifying the pack's lineage. A hush settled in the crowd as Cedric finally emerged from behind the banners with a small retinue of loyal pack warriors. He was dressed in a finely tailored dark tunic, also bearing the silver crest on the chest. Up close, he looked every bit an alpha, imposing in stature, broad shoulders that exuded confidence, and sharp features that suggested an unbreakable resolve. His eyes were an intense gray, reflecting the fierce intelligence and composure he carried. But in those eyes also flickered a storm, something restless, searching for completion. Elysia's breath caught as their gazes briefly met from across the dais. The crowd parted, revealing her glittering gown and her eager smile. She offered a graceful curtsy, and Cedric nodded, acknowledging her with a polite inclination of his head. Then he began to step forward, each footfall echoing over the stones, as if every movement carried the weight of tradition behind it. Raina stayed a pace behind her sister. She intended to stand quietly, her eyes lowered, following the protocol that had been drilled into them. But something made her look up. Perhaps it was curiosity, or a small stirring of her wolf's senses. As she did, Cedric's gaze slid away from Elysia, as though pulled by a force he did not fully understand. Their eyes met. It was only a fraction of a moment, yet it felt like an eternity. Instantly, Raina's heart thudded in her chest, sending jolts of energy through her veins. She could not look away, even though she knew it was improper. Cedric, for his part, seemed momentarily taken aback, his steps faltering. Confusion flashed across his features. People in the crowd exchanged glances, trying to discern what had just happened. Raina's cheeks flushed, and she quickly cast her eyes downward, feeling an inexplicable rush of heat spread through her. She told herself it was the weight of so many eyes upon her. She tried to push away the sensation that something deep within her had awakened. Elysia did not seem to notice, being too enthralled with her own excitement, but a few close observers, including the father of the sisters, caught that short interaction. Brows furrowed, uncertain of what to make of it. Nonetheless, the proceedings continued. An elder stepped forward, arms raised to gather everyone's attention. He spoke in a resonant voice about the union that had been planned for years, praising the lineage of Elysia's family and celebrating the ties that would be strengthened by the future Luna's bond with the Alpha. Elysia stood tall, head high, eyes shining. Cedric maintained a stoic composure, but every so often his gaze would drift back, almost helplessly, toward Raina. Each time it happened, Raina felt a surge of unfamiliar electricity course through her. When the elder concluded, Cedric was meant to publicly affirm the betrothal. He paused, scanning the courtyard as if searching for something. An unsettled murmur filled the space as the tension grew. Elysia flashed a concerned look, but the moment was brief, and Cedric forced a courteous smile. In measured words, he declared his respect and admiration for the pack's traditions, acknowledging Elysia's pedigree and the many years of preparation. With that, the ceremony reached its formal close, though an undercurrent of uncertainty rippled through everyone present. For the afternoon's festivities, the courtyard transformed into a merry celebration. Musicians played lively tunes, and tables overflowed with freshly prepared food. Elysia was surrounded by a small cluster of admirers and older pack members, anxious to discuss future plans. Cedric, as the guest of honor, moved among them like the alpha he was, offering short but polite conversation. Yet there was a hint of restlessness around him, as if he were navigating a labyrinth with no exit. Raina stayed near the edges, uneasy with the sudden swirl of emotions inside her. She noticed Cedric's occasional glances, and she tried to maintain a polite distance. She reasoned that the feeling would pass, that this must be some odd reaction to seeing an alpha for the first time up close, and that she was merely caught off guard by his presence. But her wolf, usually placid, stirred at the core of her being, a gentle rumble that suggested something bigger was happening. Late in the afternoon, Raina slipped away from the courtyard to catch her breath. The festivities felt suffocating, and she craved the serenity of the forest. She managed to find a quiet clearing by a small stream, where she often sought refuge. Towering pine trees muffled the noise of the celebration, and she settled on a mossy rock at the water's edge. She dipped her hand into the cool flow, trying to steady her racing thoughts. Her reflection, rippling in the gentle current, looked perplexed. She wanted to believe that life would continue as before, with Elysia preparing for her role as Luna. But how could she ignore that strange moment when she and Cedric locked eyes? She could not dismiss the jolt of recognition she felt, almost as if fate was whispering that something entirely new and unexpected was on the horizon. A twig snapped behind her, prompting Raina to whirl around. Her heart lurched when she saw Cedric standing at the edge of the clearing. He had followed her, though why she could not guess. His gaze was intense, and for several seconds neither of them moved nor spoke. The soft rush of water formed the only sound, punctuated by their mutual tense silence. "I am sorry," Cedric said, his voice steady yet somehow reverent, as though compelled to speak gently. "I did not mean to startle you. I just needed a break from everything." Raina realized she was still staring at him, poised as if ready to flee. Forcing herself to relax, she managed a nod. "It's all right," she replied. "I came here for the same reason." Cedric took a step closer, then paused, as though uncertain of how to proceed. She gestured for him to sit on a nearby boulder, and he did so, carefully, as if acknowledging that intruding on her solitude could be perceived as overstepping. Silence enveloped them again, and Raina wondered if he could hear the thunder of her heartbeat. "I am sure you know Elysia is the one everyone expects me to be with," he said, after a moment, his voice tinged with confusion. "It is all I have heard from my father, from the elders, from your family, and from the rest of the pack. I came here to formalize that connection, but I find my eyes—" He trailed off, struggling for the right words. "They keep searching for you, and I can't explain why." Raina's cheeks warmed again, though she tried to keep her composure. "I am sorry," she murmured. "I do not wish to interfere." His gray eyes lit with a flicker of turmoil. "I do not blame you. This was not my choice, or perhaps it was, and I never realized it until today." He looked away, gathering his thoughts. When we locked eyes, something inside me shifted. You might think it strange, but I sensed a bond that I have never felt. I have barely had time to understand it, but it is stronger than any ceremony or arrangement. Raina swallowed, her throat dry as parchment. She struggled to form a response. The notion that the Alpha would openly express such feelings to her, especially on the day he was meant to confirm his union with her sister, felt impossible. And yet, she could not deny the pull in her own soul. "It is indeed strong," she finally whispered, wincing at how frail her voice sounded. "But Alicia," Cedric's gaze sharpened. "I know she is the one promised to me," he said quietly. "But the wolf in me, my instincts, reject that path. I cannot describe how intense it is. It almost feels as if my very nature, my destiny, is in question." A surge of guilt washed over Raina. Elysia was everything their father and the elders had worked toward, the rightful Luna. Raina could not bear the thought of shattering her sister's joy. "There must be some mistake," she blurted, though her heart told her that the primal bond she felt was no error. "You only just met me. It could be a passing confusion." Cedric's expression softened, and the tension in his shoulders eased slightly. "I wish I could dismiss it," he said, voice threaded with regret. "But I have learned to trust my instincts, and they are calling me toward you as fiercely as a wolf tracks its mate." He stood then, as if the conversation was overwhelming him. "I will try to do the right thing for the pack," he said, but the resolve in his eyes warred with the longing that he did not know how to tame. For a moment, Raina wanted to reach for him, to close the distance that felt so heavy between them. Instead, she folded her hands in her lap and sat unmoving. After lingering in silence, Cedric gave a stiff bow and returned to the main settlement, leaving Raina in solitude with a storm of emotions she had no idea how to navigate. The day's festivities lasted well into the evening, but Raina found little reason to rejoin them. She returned home under the cover of twilight, praying that her father and sister would be too preoccupied to notice her absence. She had no desire to explain the turmoil raging within her. Belysia was indeed distracted, regaling a few close friends with stories of how the ceremony would be concluded in a formal betrothal soon. Raina's father was away, speaking to some elders about pack matters. Raina slipped into her room, quietly closed the door, and leaned against it, exhaling shakily. In the silence, she relived Cedric's words, his unguarded confession of a magnetic pull he could not ignore. She lay in bed, trying to reassure herself that a single exchange could not unravel years of planning, that the pack's well-established order would remain intact. But deep within, she feared a tidal shift she was powerless to stop. That night, Raina dreamed of running through a moonlit forest, the scent of pine and fresh earth clinging to her. She sensed a presence running beside her, strong and resolute, guiding her deeper into the woods. She never saw its face, only felt its power surge through her veins as if the two of them were connected by something greater than choice. She awoke before dawn, unsettled, and spent the morning in anxious reflection. At daybreak, Elysia, bright-eyed and more radiant than ever, entered Raina's room unannounced and perched on the foot of the bed. "Wake up, sleepyhead," she teased, though she was nearly trembling with nervous energy. "I have meetings with the elders today to discuss my formal acceptance as Luna. There is so much to plan, and I need you with me." I am certain Cedric will join as well. Raina forced a small smile, her chest constricting at the mention of Cedric's name. Yes, of course, she managed. I will accompany you. Elysia tilted her head, a slight frown drawing her brows together. You seemed distant during the celebrations yesterday, she remarked. I hope you are not unwell. Father was looking for you, but he was tied up with some urgent matter and could not find you. Is everything all right? Raina's heart thumped, but she nodded with a steadiness she was far from feeling. I just needed some air. The crowd was overwhelming. Seemingly satisfied, Elysia hummed in agreement. Well, hopefully you are rested. We have quite the day ahead. The elders have called a morning council. I think it will be the second step in finalizing my arrangement with the Alpha. After yesterday's ceremony, they probably just want to make sure everything is organized. She hopped off the bed, brimming with excitement. Hurry, get dressed, or we will be late. Raina watched as her sister strode confidently from the room. Guilt and an uneasy swirl of longing coiled in her stomach, threatening to ruin her composure. She tried to banish the memory of Cedric's words from her thoughts, to focus on Elysia's legitimate claim, but it was like trying to ignore an approaching storm. The more she tried to push it away, the more insistently it raged in her mind. Nevertheless, she prepared herself quickly, dressing in a modest outfit suitable for a council gathering. When she joined her sister, father, and a handful of pack elders at the meeting hall, she found Cedric already seated at a long wooden table, flanked by two of his closest advisors. He glanced up as they entered, his calm facade betraying a flicker of tension when he spotted Raina. But no one seemed to notice, as all eyes were on Elysia. The lead elder, a stooped but canine figure, addressed the group. We gather today to continue our discussion of the bond that will officially unite our Alpha with the rightful Luna. Our goal is to ensure the final ceremony reflects both tradition and the will of the pack. Elysia and Cedric sat across from each other, and for the next hour or more, the elders spoke of symbolic rituals, the exchange of tokens, and the responsibilities that would fall to Elysia once the bond was recognized. Elysia contributed her opinions with enthusiasm, describing in detail how she wished to incorporate certain aspects of the pack's lore into the ceremony. Cedric acknowledged her points with polite agreement, but Raina sensed a distance in his demeanor, his mind seemingly elsewhere. Occasionally, his eyes flicked toward Raina, a silent reminder of the unnamed bond that hung between them. As the meeting wound down, Elysia seemed more certain than ever of her place in the pack's future. But Cedric's quiet discontent and Raina's silent turmoil grew louder in her own mind. When the council adjourned, Elysia was called away to confer about ceremonial attire. Raina stood by, intending to slip out unobtrusively, but Cedric took the chance to approach her. A swirl of apprehension and unspoken longing rippled through Raina's thoughts as Cedric drew near. He glanced around, ensuring no one was in earshot, then murmured, I wish to speak with you alone. Tonight. I am not sure if that is wise. Raina stammered, casting her eyes downward. Elysia, she will be with the seamstresses and the elders for the rest of the afternoon, Cedric replied, his voice laced with quiet urgency. Meet me by the old well in the orchard at dusk. Please. I need to understand this pull between us. You must feel it too. Raina's breath caught in her throat. It was dangerous to continue this clandestine conversation, especially now, yet her heart hammered with a traitorous excitement. Against her better judgment, she found herself nodding. Cedric dipped his head in thanks, a fleeting smile of relief on his face, before departing to attend to his alpha duties. All afternoon, Raina could not focus on anything else. She drifted through various chores around the village, but her mind remained tethered to the approaching meeting, torn between anticipation and fear. She worried about betraying her sister, of stoking a flame that could burn the entire pack if discovered. Yet the wolf within her howled for answers, urging her to follow the magnetic spark that Cedric awakened. When dusk arrived, Raina slipped away from her home, careful to avoid attention. The orchard lay to the west of the main village, where rows of ancient apple trees, heavy with fruit, rustled in the gentle breeze. The old stone well stood at the center, moss creeping over its edges, a relic from decades past. Lanterns lined the perimeter of the orchard, casting dancing shadows on the ground. Cedric was already there, leaning against the low stone wall of the well. He looked pensive, arms crossed over his chest. When he saw Raina approach, he pushed away from the well, stepping forward with measured strides that revealed a hint of vulnerability. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice subdued. Raina nodded, her heart fluttering as she forced herself to meet his gaze. "I should not be here," she whispered, though the words sounded weak even to her own ears. "I know," he conceded, voice laden with regret. "Yet I could not bear the thought of ignoring whatever this is. I sense that something in me recognized you before I had a chance to question it. It felt like fate." He paused, as if the word itself held tremendous weight. "I have tried to reason my way out of it, telling myself that tradition demands I bond with Elysia. I have tried to focus on the pack's needs, but my wolf, my instincts have never led me astray before." Raina hugged her arms around herself, unsure how to articulate the conflict tearing at her. "I cannot betray my sister," she said. "She has been raised for this. She is the rightful mate in the eyes of the pack. Who am I to stand in the way of that?" Cedric took a step closer, close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him. "I understand your loyalty," he said, "and I do not question her abilities or her upbringing. But I know if I move forward with her, I will be going against what my own wolf demands." He hesitated, frustration creeping into his tone. "We are told from birth to trust the bond that flows in our blood, the connection that helps us recognize the one meant for us. Now it stands at odds with years of tradition, and I do not know how to reconcile that." A surge of emotions, impossible to untangle, surged through Raina. Part of her longed to place a hand on his chest, to feel the heartbeat that called her own. Another part feared the consequences if she allowed these feelings to grow. "Elysia is everything the pack wants in a Luna," she whispered, her voice quivering. "She is more suited to lead than I will ever be." Cedric's eyes blazed with resolve. "Perhaps the pack's assumption is incorrect. You have a quiet strength, Raina, something that calls to me more than mere surface qualities. Leadership can be taught, but a true bond," he trailed off, struggling to express the significance of what he felt. He extended a hand, as if to invite her into his confidence, and Raina nearly took it before she forced herself to draw back. The orchard around them seemed to hold its breath, the night air laden with the tension between them. She was overwhelmed by the intensity in his eyes, by the closeness of his presence, and by the truth that resonated within her. She felt the bond, too, that unshakable conviction that somehow they were meant for each other. Yet her love for her sister and her desire to honor the pack weighed on her like a stone. "I do not know what to do," she admitted, tears stinging her eyes. "If I follow what my heart is telling me, I will shatter Elysia's dream, my father's expectations, and the entire tradition that holds our pack together." Cedric lowered his gaze, a flicker of pain crossing his face. "I cannot force your choice," he said softly. "If you tell me to uphold the arrangement, If you believe you cannot accept this bond, I will respect that, but I cannot pretend that it will not break me to do so." They stood there in painful silence, the orchard's canopy of leaves rustling overhead. The moon peeked through the branches, casting pale light that danced in fleeting patterns around them. Eventually, Raina exhaled, unsure how to soothe the ache in her heart. "I need time," she whispered. "Time to understand, to figure out what is right for everyone." Cedric nodded, resigned. "I will give you all the time you need," he replied. "But we must be discreet. If word of this spreads before we are certain of our path, it could cause uproar within the pack." Raina shivered. "I promise I will speak of this to no one." He inclined his head in gratitude. Then, in a moment of unguarded tenderness, he reached for her hand. For an agonizing second, Raina allowed it, feeling the surge of recognition that coursed between them like an electric current. Then she withdrew her hand gently, stepping back, and he let her go without protest. Before departing, Cedric cast one last look at her, a silent question lingering in his eyes. Raina offered him the barest hint of a reassuring smile, and he vanished into the orchard's gloom. She remained there a while longer, staring at the old well, wondering if any magic in its depths could answer the impossible questions tormenting her. When Raina finally returned to her home, the house was quiet. She slipped into her bed, but sleep proved elusive. Images of the painful yearning in Cedric's gaze and the memory of his hand clasping hers replayed incessantly. Over and over, she was forced to acknowledge that the bond she felt was no passing fancy. It was a wolf's instinct, a fundamental truth of her being. Yet how could she possibly choose it over her sister's rightful place? She tossed and turned, the hours creeping by, until the first rays of dawn. Only then did exhaustion catch her, and she sank into a fitful slumber haunted by visions of Elysia standing on a throne, scorned and furious, and Cedric by her side, face shadowed with regret. The next morning, she stumbled through her routine, eyes bleary and heart heavy. Elysia was already out of the house, likely immersed in planning and discussions regarding her future role. Their father, too, was absent, attending to business with the elders. Relieved to avoid immediate inquiries, Raina wandered to the small garden behind their home. There, she spent the better part of an hour quietly tending rows of herbs, finding a modicum of comfort in the soil and the scent of greenery. Yet no matter how she tried to distract herself, a dull ache persisted in her chest. She needed guidance, but who could she talk to without betraying the trust Cedric had placed in her? Her closest friends would be unable to remain neutral, and the elders would only uphold tradition. She feared her father's reaction if he discovered the truth. Worst of all was imagining the devastation it might cause Elysia. Anxiety gnawed at Raina, pressing her to seek relief. Eventually, she found herself drifting toward the forest path that led to the old training grounds, a secluded clearing where pack members sometimes practiced shifting and sparring away from prying eyes. She was not skilled at combat, but she could at least shift into her wolf form to run and clear her head. Once among the towering oaks and pines, she inhaled the crisp air. A hush lay over the forest, broken only by the whisper of leaves rustling underfoot. She reached a quiet patch of ground, closed her eyes, and let the shift flow through her. Her bones elongated, fur rippled over her skin, and when she opened her eyes again, her senses exploded with new acuity. She smelled every leaf, heard every distant heartbeat of a squirrel foraging somewhere in the undergrowth. Her wolf was eager to break into a run. For a time, she sprinted between the trees, weaving around roots and leaping over boulders. She ran until her limbs ached with a delicious burn, letting her worries vanish into the primal sensation of freedom. Only when she reached a small meadow did she finally slow, her sides heaving. It was there, standing in the high grass, in her wolf form, that she became aware of another presence. She turned, hackles raised, to find Cedric in his wolf skin emerging from the brush. He looked every bit the alpha, a large and commanding gray creature with piercing eyes that recognized her instantly. He approached slowly, a low whine escaping his throat, as though to express empathy for the conflict they both shared. A mix of panic and relief shot through Raina. She had come here believing she would be alone, yet she should have anticipated the alpha might train or patrol these woods. Their wolves faced each other under the subdued light filtering through the canopy. She sensed no threat from him, just a wordless understanding that neither had yet found a solution to their problem. Cedric padded closer, and she fought the instinct to bolt. His gaze shimmered with a tumult of emotion, but all Raina felt was empathy. He moved in a slow circle around her, the subtle posture of a wolf seeking acceptance. She hesitated, torn between the primal call to connect and the lingering fear of what they would unleash by acknowledging it. At last, she let out a soft, cautious yip. Cedric responded with a short bark, and they tentatively approached each other. Nose to nose, they inhaled the scents that told them everything words could not. Their mutual longing, the swirling confusion, and the undeniable bond that tethered them together. Just then, the snap of a twig in the distance startled them. They darted apart, ears pricked, searching for the intruder. Within seconds, they both caught the distinct scent of one of the pack elders approaching. If the elder discovered them together, alone, it would surely stoke suspicion. Raina's heart pounded with sudden fear, and Cedric gestured with a quick dip of his muzzle for her to vanish back into the forest. Without hesitation, she sprinted away, weaving through the undergrowth until she felt certain she would not be found. She shifted back to human form behind the cover of a clump of tall shrubs. Her pulse raced from both the exertion and the close call. It was clear that avoiding each other entirely would be the safest path, yet their wolves seemed to pull them back together, heedless of consequence. By the time Raina returned home, twilight had fallen again. Elysia was there, radiant as always, retelling stories of an upcoming ceremony. Though her sister's excitement was palpable, Raina noticed hints of concern in Elysia's demeanor. Twice, Elysia started to ask if something was on Raina's mind, but both times Raina deflected with vague reassurances. She felt like a coward for not confessing her secret, but fear of the fallout kept her silent. Days slipped by in a tense pattern. Elysia delved deeper into wedding preparations, meeting with seamstresses, elders, and even a traveling tailor who specialized in ceremonial attire. The entire pack buzzed with anticipation, awaiting the announcement of the final date for the Luna bonding ceremony. Meanwhile, Cedric performed his duties with solemn precision, but those closest to him noticed his occasional distraction. Raina did her best to avoid direct contact, throwing herself into chores and small tasks around the village. She never asked him to come to her, yet somehow their paths crossed time and again, each encounter intensifying the undeniable link they shared. Despite her best efforts, Raina was unable to hide her inner turmoil from her father. One evening, as she helped prepare dinner in their modest kitchen, he approached her with quiet concern. "Raina," he said, setting aside a bowl of herbs, "you have seemed distant lately. Elysia is too focused on her upcoming ceremony to notice, but I worry something weighs on you. Is it merely the excitement of your sister's future, or is there something else you wish to share?" Her throat went dry. She forced a small smile. "I am fine, father," she lied, though her tone wavered. "I suppose I am just overwhelmed by how quickly everything is changing." He nodded in understanding, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Change can be unsettling," he agreed. "But it is a blessing to see our family so close to the highest seat in the pack. We must trust that the arrangement we have nurtured all these years will benefit everyone." She mustered a nod. Guilt gnawed at her. If only her father knew how tenuous that arrangement really was. In the dead of night, Raina found herself staring at the moon from her bedroom window, heart pounding with a restless longing that refused to fade. She prayed for a clear path, for some sign or intervention that would allow her to preserve her sister's happiness without denying her wolf's truth. When morning arrived, a group of the pack's older warriors departed on a scouting mission to check the surrounding territories for any roving threats. The tensions with rival packs had simmered for months, though no direct conflict had broken out recently. Still, vigilance was required. Cedric oversaw their departure from the main courtyard, where Elysia stood at his side, a sight that appeared to confirm her rightful role as Luna. People watched with admiration, convinced they saw in this couple the strong leadership that would guide Silver Crest into prosperity. However, Raina, observing from a distance, sensed Cedric's unease. Even with Elysia by his side, he looked incomplete, his mind continually drifting elsewhere. At one point, his gaze flicked across the crowd, connecting with Raina's. The message was clear. They both felt helpless, wrestling with responsibilities, duty, and a bond that defied logic or plan. That evening, the pack prepared a modest feast to bless the warriors' safe travels. Long tables were placed around a roaring fire in the courtyard, with plates heaped with food. Elysia glided among the guests, laughing and exuding warmth, while Cedric offered stoic nods of acknowledgement. The entire scene was a portrait of a strong alpha and his future Luna. Though Raina saw the subtle tension underlying their public facade, she tried to blend into the background, sitting near a group of younger wolves and half listening to their chatter. They discussed trivial pack gossip, the best hunting grounds, and debated which territory landmarks were the oldest. Raina tried to laugh at their banter, but her mood was weighed down by private pain. Eventually, Cedric made his way across the courtyard, greeting various clusters of people, until he arrived near her group. Her heart lurched at his closeness. He exchanged greetings with the others, but when he glanced at Raina, she averted her eyes and pretended interest in an empty platter. The rest of the group took no notice, continuing their light-hearted talk. Yet Raina felt the intensity of Cedric's presence, an unspoken tension thrumming beneath every breath. When the meal ended and darkness fully descended, Raina quietly excused herself. As she slipped away, she spotted Elysia throwing glances at Cedric, but he was busied by a conversation with a high-ranking elder. Elysia's expression was pleased, if a bit concerned, probably from the stress of planning a large ceremony. Raina wished she could push aside her guilt, but it twisted in her gut like a blade. She walked aimlessly through the village until she found herself standing outside the small chapel. It was a simple building, used for blessings and rites that anchored the pack's spiritual side. She had hardly realized her feet had carried her here. Perhaps, she told herself, she needed some kind of divine guidance. Sighing, she stepped inside. The chapel was lit by a single lantern placed near the simple altar. Carvings of wolf silhouettes in the walls attested to the pack's devotion to the moon goddess. A figure that some believed watched over them. Raina moved to a bench at the front and sank to her knees, hands clasped. She did not have the words for a prayer, nor the clarity to ask for a specific outcome. She only wanted relief from the war raging in her soul. She had barely begun to close her eyes when a presence at the door made her jerk around. Cedric stood framed by the moonlight, his expression pained, as if he had been drawn here against his will. She rose to her feet, her pulse hammering. "I am sorry," he said quietly, stepping into the chapel. "I did not mean to intrude." Raina shook her head, at a loss for how to respond. "You do not need to apologize," she managed. "I am not sure how much solitude would help me now. Everything feels so hopeless." Cedric set the lantern he carried on a nearby shelf. The dim light flickered over his face, casting his features in deep shadows. "I saw you leave," he explained, voice hushed in the sacred space, "and I followed. Forgive me, but I had to speak with you again." Raina's eyes drifted to the carvings of wolves on the chapel walls. "I wish there were some easy solution," she murmured. "But every time I consider the future, I see only heartbreak. If we pursue this bond, Elysia will be humiliated, my father will be furious, and the pack might be divided." She turned to face him, her voice trembling. "But if I let you go, something inside me dies, and I fear you will never be content." Cedric stepped closer, his resolve visible even in the wavering light. "I cannot deny what I feel for you," he said. "Every day, it grows stronger. But I will not force you to act on it. If your choice is to protect your sister, then I will do what is expected. I will find a way to live with the emptiness. But I do not know if the pack can truly flourish if its alpha denies a bond that is clearly fated." Tears welled in Raina's eyes. She no longer had the strength to mask her pain. "I wish I knew what the goddess intended," she whispered, glancing toward the moon symbol etched above the altar. "I have never asked for a grand destiny. I have always been content with a simple life, letting Elysia take the spotlight. Why, of all times, would fate step in now?" Gently, Cedric reached out, brushing the back of his knuckles against her cheek. The tenderness of the gesture stole her breath. She wanted to cling to the warmth of his hand and forget the outside world. But she knew they could not remain in this suspended moment forever. He spoke softly. "Whatever happens, I will not abandon you. I do not deserve that kind of devotion," she replied, voice breaking. "You deserve even more," he insisted. "If only you believed it." Silence settled between them, thicker and heavier than any words they could exchange. This was the crossroads, a place where neither had the courage to take a definitive step. At length, Cedric bowed his head. "I will do whatever you decide," he said. "If you say there is no chance for us, I will accept it, even if it costs me peace. But if there is hope, even a sliver, I must ask you to consider it before time runs out. The betrothal ceremony will be announced soon, and once it is sealed, there will be no going back." Raina nodded numbly. "I understand," she whispered, feeling the weight of an impossible choice crushing her. Cedric left the chapel, and Raina stood alone in the flickering lantern light, tears slipping down her cheeks. She felt as though the moon goddess herself was looking down, demanding she choose between two worlds, her sister's cherished destiny or the fierce, unbreakable bond of a true mate. Chapter 2. In the days that followed, the tension in the pack mounted. Everyone can feel the momentum building toward the official betrothal ceremony, though no precise date had been declared. Elysia was constantly in motion, orchestrating details like floral arrangements and seating for visiting dignitaries from neighboring packs. She had always loved planning and controlling a grand spectacle, so most assumed she was in her element. Yet Raina noticed faint lines of worry on her sister's face, as though Elysia also sensed something amiss beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Cedric immersed himself in alpha duties more thoroughly than ever, likely to avoid suspicion. He convened with elders, managed border patrols, and even visited small outlying settlements within the Silver Crest territory. He handled each responsibility with efficiency, but those close to him remarked in hushed tones that he seemed restless. Raina took refuge in her old habits, preferring the solitude of the forest. She sometimes visited the orchard or sat by the stream to read or simply think. She knew she could not run from her dilemma forever, but she needed space to reflect. Each time she returned home, she found the house bustling with visitors congratulating Elysia, dropping off small gifts, or offering unsolicited advice for the big day. Despite her careful attempts to maintain distance, Raina could not avoid Cedric altogether. She occasionally glimpsed him as he moved about the village, their eyes meeting in silent acknowledgement of the turmoil neither of them had solved. One afternoon, as Raina was returning from gathering herbs for the village healer, she encountered her father speaking quietly with Elysia in the courtyard. She paused under an archway of climbing roses, not wanting to interrupt. Their tones were sober, and Raina caught bits of the conversation that made her pulse quicken. "Is something wrong with Cedric?" Elysia asked, her voice low. "He answers my questions, but it is like he is holding part of himself back. I have tried to arrange private time, but he always seems busy or distant." Raina's father gave a thoughtful hum. "He may be weighed down by the obligations of leadership. The alpha's role is not a light burden, especially for someone still adjusting to newly inherited power." He paused, then added, "Have you tried speaking to him about your concerns, directly and plainly?" "Yes, but he only reassures me with polite words." "I sense no real warmth," Elysia confessed, her voice trembling. "Slightly. I fear he might be second-guessing our union. I cannot imagine why, Father. We have always been told this was meant to be, have we not?" Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "Patience, child. The bond will solidify once the ceremony is complete. Until then, perhaps it is a matter of bridging the gap between courtesy and genuine affection. Give him time." Elysia nodded, though the uncertainty in her eyes remained. "I will try, but every day that passes without clarity frays my nerves. He was not like this when he first arrived, at least from what I could tell." She clenched her fists, as if trying to seize control of the situation. "I will not let anything stand in the way of our destiny, even if I must find a way to reignite his interest." At that, Raina eased away, retreating quietly before they noticed her presence. Her heart pounded, realizing that Elysia, too, felt the distance that sprang from Cedric's true bond with someone else. Guilt flooded her, stronger than before. She had never wanted to steal her sister's dreams, yet the truth loomed impossibly large. By dusk that day, Elysia summoned Raina into their shared bedroom, an uncharacteristic tremor in her voice. Raina braced herself for a confrontation she had long dreaded. Inside, Elysia stood by the window, the fading sunlight painting her silver gown in warm hues. She turned to face Raina, eyes searching. "Sit," she said softly, gesturing to the bed. Raina obeyed, her pulse hammering. The corners of Elysia's lips twitched, torn between a forced smile and the stress that clung to her. "You are my sister," she began, voice thin, "and I love you dearly. We have always shared everything, from secrets to silly childhood fantasies." She paused, inhaling a shaky breath. "I need to know something, and I beg you to tell me the truth." Raina gripped the edge of the bed, heart thudding painfully. "What do you need to know?" Elysia glanced out the window, as if the words were difficult to form. "You have spent years with me, hearing about my aspirations and my excitement for this bond. You, of all people, know how important it is to me. Lately, though, I sense your sadness, or perhaps reluctance, whenever the ceremony is mentioned. It is as if you are distressed by the idea of Cedric and me. But why, Raina? Are you unhappy about something that concerns me?" Raina swallowed hard. The direct question cut deep, too close to the truth. "Elysia," she murmured, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I?" Elysia turned, her expression laced with both sisterly compassion and fierce determination. "I have tried not to pry, but I cannot ignore my instincts. Cedric seems distant. Something is not right, and I feel as though a barrier stands between me and the happiness we were promised." She paused, stepping closer. "I need to know if you have anything to do with this change in him." The words struck like lightning, and Raina's heart lurched as if seized by icy hands. She nearly lost the composure she clung to. "How could I?" she whispered, striving to sound convincing. "You are the one he chose or was destined to choose. I am nobody in this arrangement." Elysia's gaze sharpened. "That is not an answer." Trapped between honesty and betrayal, Raina felt panic coil around her. She tried to speak, but the guilt was overwhelming. Finally, she managed to say, "I would never deliberately hurt you, Elysia. I swear I only want your happiness. If Cedric is distant, perhaps it is as Father said, he is burdened by responsibilities." A flicker of relief crossed Elysia's face, though distrust lingered in her eyes. After a tense silence, she nodded. "I believe you," she said softly, though her expression suggested she was still uncertain. "We are so close to the ceremony. I cannot falter now. I need you by my side, Raina, supporting me. Promise me you will not disappear again or hold back your encouragement." Despite the tears that threatened to form, Raina mustered a weak smile and nodded. She was painfully aware that her silence was a lie by omission, and her sister's unwavering trust felt like a knife twisting in her heart. As the final preparations accelerated, Elysia and Cedric were thrust into a series of pre-ceremonial engagements. They attended blessing rites conducted by the elders, accepted gifts from allied pack leaders, and discussed treaties that would be formalized once Elysia became Luna. Raina was frequently roped into tasks, assisting Elysia or greeting visitors, and every time she had to watch her sister with Cedric, the guilt gnawed deeper. Meanwhile, Cedric's eyes betrayed his frustration, though in public he performed his role without complaint. One rainy afternoon, Raina was helping arrange flower bouquets in the main hall when she overheard a conversation between two elders. They did not notice her as she stood behind a tall arrangement, hidden by the blooms. "I have concerns," one elder murmured to the other. "The Alpha's true bond might not lie with the one we promised him. There are rumors afloat that question the sincerity of his affections for the eldest daughter." The second elder sighed heavily. "Such rumors are dangerous. If the Alpha rejects the union we cultivated, it would risk our relations with other packs and might even fracture the unity within Silver Crest. The entire territory has anticipated this match for years." They both exchanged worried looks. "The day is almost upon us," the first one said. "We can only pray that the bond stands, for the sake of peace." Alarmed, Raina placed a hand over her mouth, heart pounding at the realization that the elders themselves had caught wind of Cedric's uncertainty. She wondered how long it would be before Elysia or their father learned of these rumors as well. After finishing her task, she hurried outside, heedless of the drizzle, and found a secluded corner beside the storage huts. She pressed her back against the damp wood, her chest tight with dread. She could not bury her head in the sand any longer. The entire pack was on the verge of discovering that their carefully crafted plans might fail. To her surprise, Cedric materialized from around the corner, his dark hair damp from the rain. She jumped, nearly crying out. but he reached for her shoulders and steadied her. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, glancing around anxiously. "If we are seen alone." He ran a hand through his wet hair, frustration evident. "I have been looking for you. I cannot keep living this lie. The official ceremony is a mere week away, yet every part of me screams that it is wrong." Raina averted her gaze, raindrops clinging to her lashes. "You think I do not feel the same anguish? But if you break it off now, Elysia will be humiliated. The pack might judge you as an unstable alpha who cannot keep his word. There could be repercussions from families that have long supported this alliance." Cedric exhaled sharply. "I know. That is why I have hesitated this long. But Raina, every day I pretend to be what they expect. I feel my wolf thrashing inside. We were taught that the bond is sacred, that it transcends old promises. The pack prides itself on cherishing such connections." He met her gaze, rain dripping down his strong jaw. "And yet, for the sake of tradition, I am told to ignore it." As if it were an inconvenient emotion, her resolve began to crack. She looked at him, this proud alpha who had everything the pack needed in a leader. She felt the deep, resonant pull she had tried so hard to deny. She could almost taste the heartbreak they would cause if they surrendered to it. Yet she also understood that continuing as they were meant living a lie. In the distance, through the curtain of rain, they heard voices calling Cedric's name. He glanced over his shoulder, then turned back to Raina. "Decide soon," he pleaded, his expression anguished. "My father's old advisor demands I make a public declaration of loyalty to Elysia in the next few days. If I do that, it seals everything." With that he dashed off, leaving Raina chilled by the rain and the gravity of his words. She barely slept that night, her thoughts whirling. She was cornered by a choice she never wanted to make. Stand by and watch Cedric tie himself to Elysia in a union devoid of true bond, or expose the truth and potentially shatter her sister's world. The next morning brought a piercing autumn sunshine that seemed to mock Raina's turbulent heart. She rose early, wandering out to the orchard before it got busy. While pacing among the rows of apple trees, she found herself wishing that fate had chosen anyone else, that she was not trapped in this star-crossed entanglement. She sank to the ground beneath one of the trees, hugging her knees to her chest. As the sunlight filtered through the leaves, she recalled the stories she had read in old lore books, tales of wolves who found themselves linked by an unbreakable bond that defied the world's plans. Often, those stories ended in tragedy, for destiny could be a cruel master. But sometimes, the packs learned to adapt, forging a new path. A voice broke through her thoughts. "You are thinking deeply." She looked up, startled, to see another figure from the pack, a young man named Cole, who served as one of Cedric's guards. He was known for his observant nature and a gentle manner that set him apart from more aggressive warriors. He gave her a small smile, tilting his head. "I was sent to find you. Elysia wants your help again. Something about finalizing a guest list." Raina rose, brushing dross from her skirt. "Thank you, Cole. I will come right away." Cole nodded, but he lingered for a moment. "Raina," he said softly, "if it is not my place to say, forgive me. But many of us have seen the strain around the upcoming ceremony. I do not claim to know exactly what is wrong, but I can see you are struggling. If you need someone to talk to, I am here." She froze, her breath catching. She had never expected an offer of support from Cole, who was typically reserved and focused on his duties. "Thank you," she managed, voice rough with emotion she tried to suppress. I appreciate that more than you know. He dipped his head politely, then guided her back to the main part of the village. Though they parted ways soon after, his kindness flickered as a small comfort in her chest, reminding her that not all would be lost if the truth emerged. There might be some who would understand, or at least who would not condemn her outright. Raina spent the day meticulously scribbling names on parchment at Alicia's insistence, planning seating arrangements for the forthcoming celebrations, discussing escort details, and feeling all the while like an outsider orchestrating her own downfall. By sunset, she retreated to her room, physically drained but restless in her soul. Her father arrived home not long after, quietly letting himself into the house. Alicia was still bustling around in the parlor, double-checking lists, so Raina thought she would be spared another conversation. She was wrong. The door to her bedroom creaked open, and her father stepped in, concern etched into his features. "Raina," he murmured, crossing the small space in a few steps. "It pains me to see the shadow behind your eyes. Are you sure you have no burden you wish to share? I am your father, you can trust me." In that moment, she longed to pour out everything, to confess that she was trapped in a fate she never asked for. But she saw Alicia's face in her mind, and remembered the devotion her father had shown for the pack's traditions. Telling him would be like igniting a wildfire. She forced a brave smile. "Father, I am only tired. The planning is quite overwhelming, even for those of us just helping from the sidelines." He nodded, though concern lingered. "Your sister's future is nearly secured. Soon she will be our Luna, and I am proud. I only want to ensure that your happiness is not neglected." Tears pricked her eyes. "I have my own life to live, Father. Do not worry about me. Just take care of Alicia." He patted her shoulder gently. "We are all here for each other." With that, he laughed, leaving her feeling torn in two. The days continued to slip by, each a new knot of tension, until, finally, the pack elders announced that the formal betrothal ceremony was set to take place in 3 days. Trumpeters sounded in the village, proclaiming the date. Decorations soon proliferated, banners hung from the rooftops, and the atmosphere bristled with both excitement and an undercurrent of urgency. Raina noticed that Cedric received the final date with a grim expression. After the announcement, he called her aside, away from prying eyes. The courtyard was alive with music, but they stood under an awning near a cluster of lanterns. He spoke in hushed, hurried tones. "Time has run short," he said, voice tense. "We must speak plainly, Raina. If we do not act, I will be bound to Alicia before the entire pack. Breaking that bond afterward would be nearly impossible without dire consequences." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "You ask me to sever the ties my family has fostered for years. They will never forgive me. Alicia may hate me for the rest of her life, and who knows how the pack will react to an alpha who disregards a promised union." Cedric placed a hand on the wall beside her, as if to steady himself. "If I go through with it, I betray everything in me that tells me you are the one. How do I lead a pack when I deny the very bond that should guide me? What example would I set?" Raina wiped away a tear that slid down her cheek. The emotional weight was crushing her. "I cannot bear the thought of destroying my sister's dream," she choked out. He swallowed hard, voice trembling with raw emotion. "I understand. But do you truly believe Alicia could have a fulfilling union with someone who can never love her wholly? She deserves the chance to find a mate who will cherish her, not a false union upheld for political reasons." Raina's chest felt tight. For the first time, she considered that her sister, for all her excitement, might ultimately be trapped in a loveless arrangement if Cedric's heart belonged elsewhere. Despite Alicia's training and readiness to lead, she deserved a mate who saw her as more than an obligation. Cedric's eyes softened. This is our crossroads. I cannot make the choice alone, because it affects you, your family, the entire pack. But if you say you are willing to try, I will stand before them and tell the truth. A wave of conflicting emotions crashed into Raina. She imagined Alicia's betrayal and tears, the fury of her father, the shock of the elders, but also the possibility of a genuine future with Cedric, guided by a bond that felt as old and unstoppable as the moon's pull on the tides. Could she embrace that without destroying everything else? Before she could speak, the sound of footsteps caused them both to tense. They separated just in time for Alicia to appear, a bright smile on her face that quickly grew confused at seeing them so close. "There you two are," she said, scanning their expressions. "Is something wrong?" Raina forced a casual shrug, while Cedric cleared his throat. "Just discussing the final ceremony details," he said smoothly, though his voice was edged with tension. "Raina was letting me know about some last-minute logistical concerns." Alicia frowned slightly, glancing between them. "Oh, I wish you had found me to discuss that. I have everything organized, but I am open to changes if necessary." She took Cedric's arm, smiling at him with a possessive warmth. "But you must be careful, dear Alpha. Even if we only have a few days, I want to spend that time with you, not with my sister." She ended with a light laugh, intended as teasing, but an undercurrent of warning threaded through her tone. Cedric mustered a polite chuckle, though tension radiated from him. "Of course," he said. "I am at your disposal. I am sure your sister only wanted to help." The moment felt suffocating. Raina ducked her head, cheeks burning with guilt, then stepped back as Alicia guided Cedric away. Their entwined figures disappeared into the throng, leaving Raina in the flickering glow of lanterns, heart pounding with the knowledge that the final collision between duty and fate was nearly upon them. Over the next 2 days, the pack prepared feverishly for the betrothal ceremony. The courtyard was transformed into a scene of opulence, with ribbons and fresh flowers woven into elaborate decorations. Musicians rehearsed, and large kitchens worked non-stop to prepare feasts for visiting dignitaries. Alicia glided through it all, directing the final touches, her composure regal despite occasional flashes of anxiety. Night fell before the final day. Raina found it impossible to sleep, so she paced the perimeter of the village under the watchful eye of the moon, seeking some semblance of inner peace. Each step reminded her that time was slipping through her fingers. By the following evening, Cedric would stand on the dais and officially pledge himself to Alicia in front of the entire pack. In her restless wandering, she found herself near the orchard once more. A solitary figure stood among the dark silhouettes of apple trees. Her wolf senses pricked, recognizing Cedric's scent, drawn to him as inexorably as she was drawn to breathe. She approached cautiously, scanning the quiet rows. He turned, eyes somber, the moonlight highlighting the sharp lines of his face. "I wondered if you would come," he said softly. She managed a trembling nod. "I cannot stay away," she admitted. "It is like something beyond me compels me to see you." He closed the distance between them, his presence overwhelming in the hush of the orchard. For a moment they stood there, breathing the same night air, hearts pounding in unison. He gently cupped her cheek, a gesture laden with both tenderness and desperation. "I have to know," he whispered, voice laced with anguish. "Whether tomorrow changes everything, or if there is still hope for us." Raina felt tears welling in her eyes. "All my life, I have yielded to my sister, wanting her to shine. Now I face the possibility that the path chosen for her was never truly hers. But is it truly mine? A flicker of determination ignited in Cedric's gaze. I cannot bear to condemn both of us to a lifetime of regret, he said. Nor can I stand by and see Elysia bound to someone who will never give her the love she deserves. But I will not act if you are unwilling. I will not destroy everything if you cannot accept the consequences. She shut her eyes, the tears rolling down her cheeks. My head says no, the price is too high. But my heart screams that I cannot let this bond slip away. I feel it with every breath, as if I was made to stand beside you. She swallowed hard, opening her eyes again to meet his. I do not want a life of regrets either. Cedric exhaled shakily, relief mingling with the awareness of the storm they would unleash. Then we must speak the truth tomorrow. It will not be easy. Elysia, your father, the elders, they will be furious, confused. But we will make them see that the bond was meant for us. Though dread coiled within her, Raina felt an odd sense of liberation. I am terrified of what will happen, she whispered, but even more terrified of a life denying what is real. He pulled her into an embrace, arms wrapping around her as if to shield her from the world. She pressed her face to his chest, inhaling the comforting warmth of his scent. In that private moment under the moonlight, she allowed herself to imagine a future where fate's design was honored, where Elysia might find her own rightful path, and where Raina could stand beside the Alpha as an equal in heart and spirit. They stood locked in that embrace for a long time, neither speaking. Rain clouds drifted across the moon, hiding its silver glow, yet still they lingered. When they finally drew apart, Cedric placed a soft kiss on Raina's forehead. Tomorrow will test us, he said. But we will face it together. With that vow echoing in her mind, Raina returned home under the cloak of darkness, slipping back into bed and lying awake, eyes wide, heart racing. Outside, the night creatures carried on their symphony, unaware of the upheaval about to sweep through the Silver Crest pack. The morning dawned crisp and cool. The final decorations were put in place, the dais arranged with ceremonial torches and a woven arch of blossoms. Guests from allied packs began to arrive, greeted by Elysia and Cedric's father's advisor. Elysia wore a gown of shimmering white, an embroidered silver wolf crest at her waist, her hair pinned in an elegant twist. She glowed with confidence, yet there was a new strain etched into her gaze. Perhaps she sensed that something was off, an ominous tension that marred her perfect day. Raina's role in the ceremony was simply to stand among the family, a silent witness to her sister's formal acceptance. She dressed in pale blue, the color Elysia chose for her. Her hands trembled as she pinned her hair, teeth chattering with apprehension. She forced herself to breathe, remembering Cedric's promise that they would confront the truth today. But how, exactly, would it unfold? Would he declare it before the entire assembly, or pull Elysia aside first? The possibilities made her stomach churn. The sun climbed higher, and the courtyard filled with onlookers. Musicians played a stately melody, and the elders took their positions around the dais. Elysia stood on the platform, regal but tense, waiting for the Alpha to join her. Her father hovered nearby, pride and a hint of nervousness mixing on his face. Finally, Cedric appeared at the head of the courtyard, flanked by a small honor guard. He wore formal attire adorned with the pack's emblem, and though he exuded authority, his eyes searched the crowd until they found Raina. Their gazes locked, and her heart skipped a beat. From the dais, the lead elder began the ceremony, his voice echoing across the gathering. He welcomed the guests, spoke of the storied alliance between their families, and emphasized the significance of this union. Elysia was introduced as the chosen mate, and the crowd applauded, though a few uncertain faces hinted that not everyone was fully convinced. The elder then turned to Cedric, inviting him to speak the words that would bind him to Elysia in the pack's eyes. Raina's entire body went rigid, her breath coming in shallow gasps. This was the moment. Cedric took a step forward, scanning the sea of faces, his voice resonating with practiced alpha confidence. "I honor the traditions of this pack," he began, "and I carry the hopes of many on my shoulders. Elysia is a worthy candidate for Luna, and I respect her dedication to the pack." Elysia offered him a radiant smile, which faltered slightly as she waited for him to continue. Cedric paused, tension rippling through the crowd as if they sensed the shift in the air. His eyes slid to Raina, who stood near the front, powerless to look away. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. He swallowed, then drew a breath. "But I cannot vow a bond that my wolf rejects," he declared, voice clear and resolute. A shocked murmur spread through the onlookers. "The vow of an alpha must align with destiny. The goddess has shown me that my true mate is not the sister I was promised." Gasps and startled cries erupted throughout the courtyard. Elysia's expression contorted into disbelief, the color draining from her face. She glanced wildly at Cedric, as if expecting him to take back his words. Instead, he continued, raising his voice to carry over the clamor. "I am bound heart and soul to Raina," he proclaimed, pointing toward her. "This is not a whim. It is the undeniable bond that every werewolf is taught to uphold. To continue with a ceremony that denies our goddess-given truth would be a grave mistake, for both me and Elysia." Raina's father gaped, stunned beyond words. The elders erupted in confusion, some yelling for calm, others demanding an explanation. Elysia stood rooted on the dais, trembling, her eyes filled with shock and betrayal as she turned to Raina, tears brimming. Raina wanted to run, to hide from the storm raging around her, but she knew it was too late. She stepped forward, though her legs felt like lead, and braced herself for the inevitable backlash. She saw her sister open her mouth to speak, confusion and rage twisting across her features, and for a moment the entire pack seemed poised on a knife's edge, uncertain of whether this unexpected truth would unravel. Everything they knew. The courtyard remained in uproar long after Cedric's shocking declaration. Dozens of guests crowded into small clusters, chattering in alarmed tones, while others simply stood in stunned disbelief. Two elders valiantly tried to restore order, their voices booming over the furious questions rising from pack members. But the confusion and anger refused to settle, and the evening brimmed with the sense that centuries of tradition had just been shattered underfoot. In the aftermath, Raina hardly knew how she reached the outskirts of the village, with Cedric beside her. The two of them slipped beyond lantern-lit pathways, ignoring the calls that followed their retreat. Raina's heart hammered as though it might burst, and her cheeks were stained with tears that refused to stop. She tried to speak, but only a broken sob escaped her lips. Cedric cupped her face gently, pulling her into an embrace beneath a towering oak on the village's edge. The tree's thick branches draped over them like a natural canopy, leaving them in partial darkness. He pressed his forehead to hers, his breath warm and unsteady. "I am sorry," he said softly, anguish clear in every syllable. "I never wanted it to happen like this. I wish there had been a gentler way." Raina let herself sag against him, trembling. "Elysia," I can still hear her voice, she whispered. I keep seeing the betrayal and heartbreak on her face. She felt the ache in her chest so keenly that it almost stole her breath. She must hate me now. Cedric drew her closer. She is wounded, yes, he murmured, and you are the one she will blame most. But it may be that, in time, she will understand we could not live a lie. Raina bit her lip, voice breaking. I do not know if she will ever forgive me, or if anyone in the pack will forgive us for this. Yet despite her remorse, there was an undeniable sense of relief inside her, as though a crushing weight had fallen away the moment Cedric spoke his truth. It was a paradox she did not know how to reconcile. Her own heart soared with the release of honesty, while her sister suffered for it. Come, Cedric said gently, taking her hand. We should not linger here in the open, with so many tempers running high. Let us go somewhere calmer. She wanted to protest that running away now would only stoke rumors further, but panic mingled with exhaustion, and she found herself nodding. He guided her away from the main paths, traversing a narrow trail that ran past the orchard and deeper into forest growth. Soon, the sounds of angry chatter faded behind them, replaced by the rhythmic hush of wind through the branches. They reached a small clearing illuminated by moonlight. A fallen log, moss-covered and glistening with dew, offered them a spot to rest. Raina settled on it with a quiet exhale, pressing her palms over her face. Cedric sat beside her, though he left a small gap so as not to overwhelm her. For a few moments, neither spoke. Overhead, the moon shone bright and implacable, as though bearing witness to the turmoil that had erupted. Raina stared at the silvered ground, memory replaying the horrifying swirl of condemnation back in the courtyard. I never expected it to be so public and so disastrous, she whispered. You told the entire pack, and now everything is unhinged. Cedric bowed his head. I could not speak false vows, not even for the sake of peace. Maybe I should have addressed the elders in private first, but at that ceremony, the moment came upon me I had to declare what was real. Could I have handled it better? Yes, likely. A trace of gratitude flickered in Raina's chest, that at least he did not regret exposing the truth. She exhaled, shoulders sagging in resignation. Where do we go from here? Before Cedric could respond, someone emerged from behind the swaying pine trees. Startled, Raina almost leapt to her feet, but recognized the visitor in the moonlight. It was Cole, one of Cedric's loyal guards, the man who had once offered Raina a listening ear. He approached cautiously, arms raised in a gesture of non-threatening intent. I come alone, he said, voice low but steady. Cedric stood, tension lining his features. Cole, has there been trouble? Are the elders searching for us? Cole paused a few paces away, his eyes reflecting both sympathy and concern. The village is in chaos, as you must have anticipated. Elysia is inconsolable. Her father and the elders are trying to calm her, but she demanded that you and Raina be brought forward to answer for this betrayal, as she calls a she. It. Raina winced, her heart clenching at the word. Is anyone hurt? She asked, terrified that outrage might have spurred a violent response. Cole shook his head. So far, no violence. Just uproar, confusion, and wounded pride. The elders, in their haste, have declared an emergency council meeting first thing in the morning. They wish to convene in the old meeting hall outside the main settlement. They have demanded that you both attend, no matter what. Cedric let out a slow breath, his jaw tightening. They wish to judge us then. I expected as much. Cole hesitated. They do. But, from what I heard, some of the elders remain open to hearing you out. Others, well, they see your act as a direct threat to the stability of the pack. There's even talk of whether your leadership can be trusted, if you cast aside a betrothal that was meant to unify certain families. A flicker of anger rose in Cedric's eyes. So they question my capacity to lead, because I embrace the bond that is fundamental to our nature. He snorted. Blind tradition can be as dangerous as any rival pack. The old ways claimed to honor genuine mates, yet for years they manipulated two families under the assumption that Alicia and I would be a suitable match. Cole bowed his head in acknowledgement. I cannot say I blame you, Alpha, but you need to be mindful. Many in the pack have pinned their hopes on this union. Shattering it now will come at a cost. Raina swallowed hard, recalling the intensity of the crowd's reaction. Did you come to escort us back, then? Are we expected to stand in front of them tonight? Shaking his head, Cole took one more step closer, voice dropping almost to a whisper. No. The elders are too busy containing Alicia's outrage and the general uproar. They agreed the matter would be best addressed after everyone had time to cool off. But you must return by sunrise for the council meeting. I suggest you get what rest you can. In times like these, the council can be ruthless. Cedric exchanged a glance with Raina, reaching for her hand. Very well, he said. We will go back peacefully in the morning and present our case. We have nothing to hide now. Then he met Cole's gaze. Thank you for coming, Cole, and for not bringing an angry mob. It's good to know at least one person remains fair-minded. Cole pressed his lips into a thin line. I serve the pack, and I have seen enough to suspect there is truth behind the bond you share, even if it breaks with what we expected. For what it is worth, I hope the council sees reason. He gave a respectful nod, then retreated into the forest, his footsteps swallowed by the darkness. For a while, Cedric and Raina remained in the clearing, digesting the magnitude of what awaited them at sunrise. The hush of night settled, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Finally, Cedric guided Raina back toward the village, though he avoided the main roads. They slipped into his family's loggia, sturdy, spacious structure near the heart of the territory, and descended a side staircase that led to a quiet hallway of guest rooms. Most of the pack's leadership, along with visiting dignitaries, would be in the main great room trying to salvage the evening's fiasco. He showed her to a small chamber with a single bed and an adjoining washroom. Stay here tonight, he said gently, his expression sober. No one should bother you in this part of the house. I do not want to risk you returning home, in case Alicia is there. A flicker of guilt crossed his face. It would only reignite her fury. Raina's eyes burned with unshed tears. She gave him a tremulous nod, stepping inside. Thank you, she managed. Then, before he could leave, she grasped his hand. Cedric, I do not know if I can survive this if the entire pack turns on me. If it means destroying everything I have ever known. His fingers tightened around hers. You are not alone. No matter the council's verdict, I will stand by you. We will find a way, Raina. The promise in his voice steadied her just enough for her to exhale in shaky relief. He left then, closing the door softly. Raina collapsed on the bed. Sobs racked her as she pictured Alicia's tears and the torn expression on her father's face. She could practically feel the disapproval radiating from every corner of the pack. Even in her exhaustion, she feared sleep, dreading what the morning would bring. Eventually, though, fatigue conquered her turmoil, and she drifted into fitful slumber, haunted by visions of the council's ruthless judgment. The morning arrived with a slate-gray sky, the sun obscured by a veil of clouds. Raina stirred at the first knock on her door. Through groggy eyes, she saw a young attendant, one of the housekeeping staff, who had come to offer breakfast and a message. The council would convene in 1 hour. She hardly touched the food, her stomach twisted in knots. For attire, she wore a plain dress she found in a chest of spare clothing, a muted brown that did nothing to settle her trembling. Once dressed, she left the room and traversed the corridors in tense silence, eventually descending a back staircase where she found Cedric. He was waiting near an entrance, wearing a sober black tunic with the silver crest insignia embroidered at the collar. Stress etched faint lines around his eyes. They exchanged a wordless greeting, stepping outside into the crisp air. The entire compound seemed strangely hushed. Most pack members must have already gone to the meeting hall or lingered anxiously nearby. Raina felt numb, hollow with apprehension. She clung to Cedric's presence like a lifeline, reminding herself that he was the alpha, that his authority carried weight. But would it be enough? They followed a winding trail through the woods to reach an old stone building used for significant deliberations. Built generations ago, its exterior bore elaborate carvings of wolves entwined in crescents, a symbol of unity under the moon's guidance. Today, those carvings seemed foreboding. Cedric pushed open the heavy wooden door, revealing a chamber lit by torches set in iron sconces. At the far end stood a long table behind which the elders had assembled, their postures stiff and their faces grim. A few other high-ranking pack members were seated along the side benches, including Raina's father, who watched them with tormented eyes. Elysia was there too, standing to one side, her arms crossed over her chest. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back into a tight bun. Gone was the regal gown she had worn the night before. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, betraying a sleepless, anguished night. Raina swallowed, guilt piercing her like a blade as she dared to meet her sister's gaze. Elysia's lips thinned into a scowl, but she made no move to speak. The lead elder stood, rapping the table twice. "Alpha Cedric, Raina, take your places." He motioned to 2 chairs placed near the center of the chamber. There was a purposeful gap between them, as if to underscore the council's skepticism about their pairing. The hush that followed was stifling. Raina forced herself to sit, clasping her trembling hands in her lap. Cedric remained upright for a moment, scanning the faces of the elders with unflinching resolve before lowering himself to the chair. His posture was rigid, his jaw set. When the lead elder spoke, his tone carried both authority and dismay. Last night, the entire pack witnessed an unprecedented event. The Alpha publicly rejected the union with Alicia in favor of claiming her sister, Raina, as his true mate. "We are here to address the implications of this act." A second elder leaned forward, adjusting his spectacles. "Alpha, you were well aware of the promise made between your family and Elysia's father. For years, the pack anticipated your formal bond. Why the sudden announcement of a different mate? Why have you done this so late in the process? On the very night intended to finalize the betrothal?" Cedric inclined his head in acknowledgement. "I did not intend deception. I only realized the truth upon meeting Raina, the day we held the initial ceremony to introduce Elysia as Luna. My wolf recognized her. The more time passed, the more undeniable this bond became. Yet I was torn by duty and tradition. I hesitated, hoping that perhaps I was mistaken. But I was not. A low murmur filled the chamber, some of it disapproving. One of the oldest elders frowned deeply, hands clasped on the table. "And you, Raina," he said in a gravelly voice, "did you willingly participate in this? Or did the Alpha coerce or confuse you into betraying your own sister?" Raina's pulse throbbed in her ears. Carefully, she rose from her chair, meeting his gaze, though her voice trembled. "No one coerced me." Cedric only spoke of his feelings after he realized them for himself. At first, I tried to deny it, for I did not want to hurt Elysia. I fought it, but the bond was too strong. My wolf, my heart, it all pointed me toward Cedric, as painful as it was. And I promise you, it has caused me more anguish than I can express. Elysia spoke then, her tone cold and fractured. You lie about your anguish. You sneaked behind my back with the alpha I was meant to marry. You never came to me. You never spoke plainly of what you felt. Maybe if you had told me at the start, this would not have blindsided me in front of the entire territory. Her voice quivered with fury. I am your sister, and you have humiliated me. Raina flinched. She longed to protest that she had been paralyzed by guilt, that she had tried to keep her distance. But none of that excused hiding such a devastating secret. You are right, she said weakly, tears threatening. I should have come to you, but I was so terrified to hurt you or betray our father. The moment we realized the bond, everything felt impossible. I wanted it all to go away. I did not choose this bond, but neither could I deny it. A harsh laugh escaped Elysia, bitterness etched across her features. It is easy to claim innocence once everything is laid bare. While you wrestled with your impossible choice, I have been planning a wedding that was never meant to be. She turned to the elders, voice sharp with anguish. I beseech you to uphold the original vow. There must be consequences for this travesty. Cedric belongs to me by tradition, by arrangement. If we allow him to break that promise, we risk destroying the order that keeps our pack strong. A third elder, her brow creased in concern, chimed in. Elysia, we understand your pain, but an alpha's bond cannot be dismissed lightly. Our people hold the genuine mating bond sacred. Are we to ignore that principle just for an arrangement that predates his ascension? The reaction in the hall was sharply divided. A handful of heads nodded in agreement, while others scowled. One elder spoke bitterly. We cannot allow personal whims to overturn carefully forged alliances. If the next alpha can do so, how can we preserve stability and peace with allied families? Cedric's voice cut through the debate, commanding attention. I am not discarding the importance of alliances, but forging them through a false bond is a weak foundation. How can we claim authenticity and honor if we force a union for mere political convenience? The lead elder signaled for silence, and the chamber quieted once more. We have heard enough to grasp the core conflict. The question we face is whether to recognize Cedric and Raina's bond as legitimate, and thus dissolve the betrothal to Elysia, or whether to enforce the prior arrangement and risk ignoring the bond. We must also consider the possibility of sanctions if the parties involved acted in bad faith. Raina's father stood then, speaking for the first time. Elders, I beg you to see reason. My family invested years of support in preparing Elysia for this role. My wife, who has passed on, left a final wish that we uphold our side of the agreement. This abrupt change betrays her memory and casts doubt on the future of my line. His voice trembled with emotion, and it pained Raina to see him in such turmoil. Cedric turned slightly toward Raina's father, a flicker of empathy in his eyes. I respect your loss, but your daughter Elysia deserves more than an alpha who cannot give her his complete devotion. The vow itself would be hollow and might lead to bitterness that tears us apart from within. An elder at the far right folded his hands on the table, addressing Raina directly. Child, do you truly believe you can fulfill the demands of a Luna's station? You were never groomed for it, never trained in the ceremonial duties. Elysia was always the one we anticipated. Her cheeks warmed, uncertain how to answer. I cannot pretend I have the experience Elysia does, but I care deeply for this pack. I serve in the healer's hut. I help gather supplies, and I am willing to learn. My bond with Cedric is no small matter. If we are united, I will devote myself to the well-being of everyone in Silvercrest, even if it takes time for me to grow into the role. Elysia's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Her father shook his head in despair. Murmurs rippled among the elders, some hesitant, some angry. For several moments, they spoke among themselves in hushed voices that Raina could not fully decipher. At last, the lead elder called for a short recess so they could deliberate privately. Everyone was asked to step outside while the council conferred. Elysia brushed past Raina without a word, leaving behind a swirl of hurt and accusation in the air. Raina followed Cedric out, her knees quivering. She found a bench in the courtyard to sit on, inhaling the crisp morning air laced with tension. Cedric stood beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Courage," he whispered, though his own voice betrayed fatigue. "We did what we had to. Fate has brought us here. We can only hope the council will not be blinded by anger." Raina's father lurked a short distance away, glancing at them with profound disappointment. She lowered her eyes, heart aching. She wanted to run to him and beg for his forgiveness, to assure him she never planned to dismantle years of tradition or the memory of her mother's wishes. But the sight of Elysia's tear-streaked face lingering by the hall's entrance kept her rooted to the bench. Elysia shot her a look of such scorn that Raina's chest constricted, and she lost the will to bridge the gap. Minutes crawled by like hours. The silence weighed heavier than any heated argument could. When at last the door opened, a junior elder beckoned them inside. They filed back into the chamber, hearts pounding in unison. The long table of elders stared at them, expressions grave. Even the torches flickered as though uneasy with the tension. The lead elder cleared his throat. "We have spoken at length. Our priority is the well-being and stability of the pack. Cedric, as Alpha, your choice of mate is crucial, but it must also honor the higher principles we uphold. Betraying a clear, genuine bond is not something we take lightly, nor is the betrayal of a long-standing agreement. The council sees two possible paths. Either we affirm the bond that you claim is fated, or we enforce the prior arrangement and hold you accountable for renouncing it. Each path carries weighty consequences." He paused to let the words sink in. Cedric set his jaw, prepared to fight if they tried to coerce him into a sham union. Raina's hands trembled in her lap. Elysia, cheeks flushed, clutched the back of a chair, prepared for either a vindication or an even deeper heartbreak. The elder continued, "After much debate, the council will not force an alpha to disregard a mate bond. Our traditions, despite the arrangement, do not surpass the natural laws of our kind. Cedric, if you proclaim Raina as your true mate, and she acknowledges the same, then this council, however reluctantly, must allow it. To do otherwise is to deny the task, foundation upon which our pack is built." A hush fell, followed by a flicker of astonishment. Elysia's eyes flashed, heartbreak warring with rage. Raina's father sagged, torn between disbelief and resignation. Raina inhaled, tears springing to her eyes at this fragile relief. It felt as though a noose had been loosened. But the elder raised his hand to forestall any reaction. "However, we do not render this decision without conditions. The scandal caused by your secrecy has shaken the unity of Silvercrest. Therefore, we require a formal reparation, a time of trial, during which both Cedric and Raina must prove their commitment to the pack. We cannot have a Luna who has not shown her crow. Willingness or her capacity to bear leadership burdens. And we cannot have an alpha who places personal desire above community welfare. Alicia's father nodded vigorously, latching on to the mention of conditions. Alicia herself pressed her lips into a thin line, as if waiting for some chance of recourse. One of the older women on the council spoke, her voice calm but firm. "This time of trial shall last for a full cycle of the moon, from the next waxing crescent to the following one. During that month, Raina will be instructed in lunar protocols and must demonstrate her readiness to assume official duties. Meanwhile, Cedric's leadership will be assessed for fairness, particularly in how he addresses the fractures within the pack that have resulted from this scandal. At the end of this period, a final blessing will be held, at which point the council will formally affirm or reject this new union." At the word reject, Raina felt a cold trickle of fear. Did that mean the council could still refuse to acknowledge her, even after all they had said about honoring the bond? She swallowed, voice shaky. "If at the end of this trial you find us lacking, what then?" The elder's eyes held a hint of sympathy. "We will cross that bridge if it comes. But it would be naive to assume your acceptance without proving it. The entire pack must see that you too uphold the responsibilities of your station. If you fail, it may require the Alpha's abdication or another drastic measure to restore equilibrium. Our hope is that will not be necessary." Cedric's brow creased, but he nodded resolutely. "We accept. I will do whatever is required to restore unity." Raina managed to echo his acceptance, her knees weak. The gravity of their task settled on her, both relief and dread swirling within. A trial period. 1 month to prove they were not guided by selfishness, but by genuine bond and a capacity to serve. She dared a glance at Alicia, whose cheeks were wet with tears, her expression flickering between heartbreak and grim acceptance. The arrangement was undone, but it had cost her dignity and undone her future. The lead elder slammed a gavel onto the table, the crack echoing through the chamber. "So be it. In 1 month's time, we will reconvene for a final pronouncement. Until then, Cedric remains Alpha. And Raina," he leveled a stern gaze at her, "you are under the mentorship of 2 elders who will teach you our laws, traditions, and leadership protocols. You will also be responsible for mending the rifts caused by this ordeal to the extent you can." With the council's decree rendered, the hearing was over, but the repercussions were just beginning. Chairs scraped against the stone floor as those present stood. Raina stole another glance at Alicia, her stomach churning with guilt. She wanted to offer some sort of apology, but the heartbreak emanating from her sister was palpable, an almost physical barrier that forbade any attempt at solace. At last, Alicia snapped her gaze away and moved to stand by their father. The two left the hall, ignoring Raina's silent plea for eye contact. Cedric gently guided her out of the chamber before more accusations could fly. They stepped into the blustery morning, the wind tugging at Raina's hair and swirling dust around the courtyard. She breathed shakily, leaning against a pillar. Cedric placed a comforting hand at her back. "We have a reprieve, at least," he murmured, though his eyes betrayed the weight of the council's verdict. "But a reprieve is all it is. Now we must prove ourselves." Raina nodded. "And if we fail, we risk everything. Alicia's father might still find a way to push for your abdication. The elders could unify against us." She thought of how her sister's entire life revolved around the notion that she was the rightful Luna. It would not be so simple for Alicia to relinquish that belief. Cedric cast a glance at the moody sky. We cannot dwell on the worst. Let us focus on fulfilling the role we claim. That is how we will earn the pack's acceptance." With a short, determined nod, he straightened. "I must gather the heads of families soon. Our first step should be addressing the confusion among them. As for you, you will likely hear from the mentors assigned by the council. They will not be lenient." Raina twisted her fingers, anxiety gnawing at her. "I wish I could hide for a day just to collect myself," she whispered, "but that is not an option." He squeezed her shoulder gently, an echo of the closeness they had dared to claim. "I will be with you whenever possible. Remember that our bond is not a shameful secret anymore. Maybe that can give you some strength, even as we navigate this trial." She offered him a small nod. "Oh, right. We do what we must." A fierce sense of duty tugged at her, overshadowed only by the ache of hurting Elysia. Still, the path was laid out. She would at least attempt to walk it with her head held high. Word traveled quickly through Silver Crest. By midday, pack members understood that, while the formal betrothal was cancelled, Cedric's new choice was given a conditional nod by the council. Discontent still simmered. On the main streets, Raina caught snippets of conversation whenever she ventured out. "Imagine that. The younger sister has snatched the alpha scandalous. Did the goddess truly bless that bond, or is it some twisted fancy? She was never trained to be our Luna. This cannot end well." Some few spoke more sympathetically. "If it is a true mate bond, we cannot deny it. We are wolves, after all." The mixed reactions weighed on Raina, each skeptical word piercing like a thorn. She resolved to keep her head down and focus on whatever tasks came her way. Around midday, an elderly woman named Yulina arrived at the entrance of Cedric's home, announcing herself as one of the 2 assigned mentors. Despite her advanced age, she stood as straight as a pine, and her eyes gleamed with the authority of a seasoned teacher. She handed Raina a parchment that outlined her new schedule, complete with lessons on pack law, leadership disputes, ritual protocols, and an array of other daunting topics. "Make no mistake," Yulina told her sternly. "This is no mere formality. You will be tested on your knowledge, your composure, and your ability to command respect. We cannot have a Luna who hides in the shadows or shies away from conflict." Raina lowered her eyes. "I understand. Where shall we begin?" Yulina sniffed, eyeing her critically. "We begin now, child. Come with me." She led Raina into a cozy reading room in Cedric's lodge, where a large desk awaited, already stacked with volumes on the history of werewolf governance and cultural traditions. Without preamble, Yulina opened a musty tome and motioned for Raina to sit. Thus began an afternoon of intense instruction. They covered everything from the genealogies of the leading families to the protocols of interpack feasts. Raina struggled to absorb the avalanche of information. Each question from Yulina felt like a test of her worthiness, and Raina stumbled often, forgetting certain lineages or mixing up different treaty details. By dusk, her head ached, and her spirits felt battered. Before the woman left, she fixed Raina with a piercing stare. "I do not envy you, child. The pack is angry, and you are at the center of it. If you truly want to stand by Cedric, you must show them you are capable of leading, no matter how they scorn you now." Swallowing her fatigue, Raina nodded. "Yes, I will work hard." "Thank you, Yulina." After Yulina departed, Raina sank onto a plush chair, eyes closed. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Cedric entering, an apologetic look on his face. "I am sorry I could not be here," he said. "The families demanded explanations, and I had to reassure them. How did your first lesson go?" She tried to smile, though the corners of her mouth trembled. It was grueling to say the least. She does not mince words. The fatigue in her voice betrayed her. Cedric crouched beside her, gently massaging her tense shoulders. "We will get through this," he whispered. "One day at a time." She drew in a shaky breath. "And tomorrow? More lessons, I presume." He nodded. "Likely. And I will be meeting with the council again. They want updates on how I plan to handle border tensions. Rival packs might see internal strife as a chance to test us." Raina's heartbeat spiked. "As if we do not have enough to worry about." They lapsed into silence, sharing a heavy, intimate moment in which the enormity of their situation pressed down like a leaden blanket. Finally, Cedric stroked her cheek, gaze steadfast. "Remember, we stand united. I vow to prove that our bond is real, and that we will not fail the pack." She placed a hand over his, letting her gratitude surface in a watery smile. "Your strength keeps me going." Despite the late hour, Cedric rose again. "I must finalize a few more matters before the night ends. Get some rest, Raina." Worn and emotionally spent, she retreated upstairs to the guest room. When she closed the door, she felt the swirl of guilt and duty pressing in again. Her sister would be at home, locked in grief or rage, and Raina had effectively replaced her in the Alpha's future. A month was not nearly enough time to mend that chasm, yet it might also be too long a wait under the scorn of the entire pack. If only the goddess would offer a sign of encouragement. Some reassurance that this bond was worth all the suffering it caused. No such sign arrived. Instead, Raina drifted to sleep amid swirling doubt, bracing for another day of endless questioning by the elders, by Yulina, and by the disapproving eyes of Silvercrest. In the next 2 weeks, Raina's life became a rigid routine of endless study sessions in the morning, tutorials on ceremonial duties in the afternoon, and mandated appearances at small gatherings with key families in Prague. The evening. Under Yulina's stern guidance, she learned the precise forms of address for elder statespeople, the significance of certain pack symbols and rites, and the intricacies of treaty negotiations. At times, a second mentor, a gray-haired man named Farron, joined them, adding further demands. Farron was even less gentle than Yulina, peppering her with abrupt questions during mealtimes or as she crossed the courtyard, testing her knowledge at every turn. Meanwhile, Cedric remained inundated with Alpha duties. He convened repeatedly with the council to address lingering fallout. Some families demanded restitution or special status, claiming they had supported Alicia's betrothal and felt betrayed by the sudden change. Others wavered on their alliances, unsure if they could trust an Alpha who broke a promise even if it was to follow a genuine bond. Raina saw the strain in Cedric's eyes whenever they met. Yet each time, he reassured her that this was the right path, that the time of trial, though daunting, would ultimately secure their union. Alicia, for her part, had vanished from the public eye, leaving many in the pack to speculate about her emotional state. Raina's father informed them that she was undergoing her own period of reflection. Furious that the council had not upheld her claim, Raina wanted to speak with her sister, if only to offer an apology or an explanation. But Alicia refused all visits. Twice, Raina mustered the courage to approach the family home, only to be turned away by her father. His face was lined with worry, but he could not conceal that he shared Alicia's sense of betrayal. "You have done enough damage," he told Raina both times, his tone uncharacteristically harsh. "Please, leave her be." The weeks pressed forward in this lonely, tense limbo. Raina improved steadily under Yulina and Farron's mentorship. Each day, She answered their test questions with more confidence, spelled out genealogies with minimal errors, and even began to speak up in group discussions about the pack's future. She discovered that while she despised the spotlight, she had a subtle gift for noticing details that others missed. Small cracks in alliances, unspoken grievances. Once, during a community forum, she used that intuition to diffuse a spat between two older clans who had conflicting land claims, suggesting a compromise that neither clan had considered. Theron, who watched from a corner, nodded grudgingly in approval. Wordless though it was, it felt like a small victory. In her spare moments, Raina walked the orchard paths, seeking fleeting comfort in nature's quiet. Sometimes, Cedric joined her there, and they strolled side by side under the apple trees. Such moments were short-lived, for Cedric was rarely free of urgent tasks. But those interludes reminded them both of the bond that started this whirlwind. He would take her hand, press a soft kiss to her knuckles, and remind her that no matter the storm, they had each other's support. And so the moon's cycle progressed. Each night, Raina glanced skyward, watching the moon wax from a slim crescent to a brighter orb, inching toward the fateful mark. As the day of final judgment approached, tension within the pack grew. Rumors spread that certain elders might vote against affirming the bond, believing that forging a new alliance with Elysia still offered a more stable future. Others whispered that Elysia herself might be planning to publicly challenge Raina, although no official statement had emerged. The day before the final council session, Raina awoke with a knot of dread in her stomach. She was to undergo a formal test administered by Yulina and Farron, an oral examination of sorts, to decide whether she had learned enough about pack governance and ceremony to qualify as a potential Luna. If she failed, the entire union could collapse. By noon, she stood in a small hall near the council chambers, facing the two mentors. A thick volume of laws lay open on a table behind them. Yulina cleared her throat, speaking briskly. "We will ask you questions covering a range of topics. Historical treaties, the role of the Luna in forging alliances, dispute resolution, rites of passage, and more. You must answer clearly and concisely. Do you understand?" Raina's mouth felt dry. "Yes, I am ready," she said, though her stomach churned with nerves. Farron launched the first question, voice sharp as a blade. "Name the 3 most significant treaties Silvercrest formed in the last century, and explain why each was pivotal." Recalling her training, Raina inhaled slowly and responded, "The Pact of the Northern Pines, signed 70 years ago, with the Rivermoon Pact. This one established shared rights to fish the northern rivers. The White Ash Accord from 50 years ago, formed with the Iron Fang Pack, provided mutual defense arrangements if either territory was invaded. Finally, the Treaty of Dawn's Glen, negotiated 20 years ago, primarily clarifying trade routes with the Aspen Peak Pack and ensuring safe passage during seasonal migrations." Farron watched her intently. "And the core difference between the White Ash Accord and the Pact of the Northern Pines in terms of mutual obligations." She steadied herself, enumerating the specific differences in armed support, trade goods, and border patrolling. Her voice wobbled only slightly. Yulina's expression remained unreadable, but she did not interrupt. The questions continued relentlessly, covering everything from ceremonial traditions for newborn pups to the customs observed when burying revered elders. Raina felt beads of sweat forming at her temples, but her memory held firm. She spoke of the Harvest Festival's historical significance, the duties of a Luna in blessing new warriors, and the intricacies of boundary negotiations with smaller, neutral packs. At times she faltered, needing a moment to recall certain dates or the hierarchy of old families. When that happened, Farron pressed harder, challenging her to think swiftly under pressure. But overall, she managed to hold her own. Yulina posed the final question. If a violent dispute erupted between two families, one with strong political clout, the other known for fierce warriors, how should Aluna intervene to ensure fairness, but also maintain respect for pack unity? Raina inhaled, gathering her thoughts. Aluna should first mediate, ensuring both families feel heard and safe in her presence. She would call upon neutral witnesses, possibly elders, to confirm that no side manipulates the truth. She would draw upon existing laws to determine if either family's claim violates pack regulations. If tensions escalate to the brink of violence, the Luna might invoke the Alpha's authority to impose a temporary truce and enforce a cooling-off period while the facts are fully investigated. Ultimately, the solution must balance upholding the law and acknowledging the unique positions of both families so that neither emerges feeling cheated or disregarded, minimizing the chance of further resentment. Silence stretched as Yulina and Farron exchanged glances. Finally, Farron closed the law book with a decisive snap. Your answers are thorough, if a bit hesitant in places. Nonetheless, you show comprehension and an ability to apply reasoned judgment to real scenarios. Yulina inclined her head, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Well done, child. You have proven that you are not, at least, an ignorant bystander. The Rester leadership presence, your composure in public, how you handle an actual crisis remains to be tested in real time, not just in theoretical questions. But from an academic standpoint, you have earned a passing mark. Relief washed over Raina so powerfully that she had to brace herself against the table to remain standing. Thank you, she whispered. I promise I will continue learning. Farron gave a curt nod. The final decision remains the council's, but they will receive our report that you have shown diligence. You may go now. Raina left the hall, heart pounding with a cocktail of triumph and bone-deep exhaustion. She found Cedric waiting outside, and she managed a tired smile. They seemed satisfied, at least for the moment, she said, her voice shaky. I do not think I disappointed them. Cedric's eyes softened with approval. I never doubted you would rise to the challenge. She let him guide her away from the stuffy corridor, through the main courtyard, and into a quiet corner near a row of tall hedges. It all rests on tomorrow's final meeting, she said, leaning against him. We have a month's worth of scandal behind us and a tense future ahead. But if the council affirms our bond, maybe we can start to heal the rifts. He gently kissed her brow. We will, together. Raina clung to that assurance as the sun sank beneath the horizon, leaving the territory cloaked in twilight. She sensed the hush that settled over the village was not a peaceful calm, but a collective anticipation. The entire pack braced for the resolution whether the Alpha's sudden switch from Elysia to Raina would be formally recognized or condemned. And no matter how fiercely she wished for closure, part of her dreaded the possibility that Elysia might intervene at the last moment, determined to reclaim the future she believed was rightfully hers. Chapter 4. Morning broke over Silvercrest, the sun unveiling a pale sky devoid of clouds. The final day of the month-long trial had arrived, and with it a sense of heaviness that pressed on every corner of the territory. In the orchard, the apples gleamed with late-season ripeness, and in the fields the grasses swayed, but there was no comfort in the beauty of the land. Everywhere, wolves prepared for the council gathering, uncertain whether the pack would splinter or find renewed unity. Raina woke before dawn, having barely slept. She paced the small guest chamber in Cedric's lodge, rehearsing the arguments she might offer if challenged before the elders. Dressed in a flowing dove-gray gown, simpler than any ceremonial garment but refined enough to show respect, she tried to calm her racing thoughts. Today would determine her entire future. If the council ruled against her, she had no idea what would come next. Could she remain in the pack? Could Cedric remain alpha? A timid knock jolted her from her anxious reverie. She opened the door to find a young attendant. "They are gathering in the great hall," he murmured. "The elders await you." She offered a nod of thanks and stepped into the corridor, head high despite the tumult inside her. Cedric joined her near the stairwell, wearing formal black attire embroidered with silver thread at the cuffs. Their gazes locked, each searching the other's face. She could read his tension in the set of his shoulders. Nonetheless, he extended his arm in silent invitation, and she hooked hers through it, drawing steadiness from his resolve. They moved through the corridors and outside, where a hushed crowd lined the path leading to the great hall. Onlookers regarded them with curiosity, skepticism, and, in a few cases, quiet support. Raina recognized glimpses of sympathy in some gazes, but overall, the mood was somber. Alesia stood near the entrance, flanked by their father. She wore a muted color, her usual radiance dulled by sadness and anger. At the sight of Raina and Cedric approaching, she stiffened, her face set in stony resentment. Raina swallowed a painful lump, longing to speak with her sister, to at least attempt some olive branch. But the tightness around Alesia's mouth and her averted eyes made it clear she did not welcome conversation. So Raina averted her gaze, chest aching. Inside the grand hall, a raised dais had been erected at the front. The council elders occupied it, their expressions grave. Yulina and Farron stood off to one side, prepared to present their findings on Raina's training. Other high-ranking wolves and family heads filled the rows of seats, forming an audience of more than 100. The air felt charged, as though a single spark could ignite a blaze. An elder who had not spoken much previously stood and rapped a staff against the floor 3 times. The resulting echoes subdued the shuffling crowd. "We gather to render the final verdict on whether the Alpha, Cedric, and Raina shall be recognized as true mates, with Raina bearing the title of Luna. This is the culmination of a month-long trial demanded by the council due to the abrupt annulment of Alesia's prior arrangement." Cedric guided Raina forward to a place directly before the dais. Alesia and her father stepped to one side, presumably to observe. The entire hall waited in taut silence as the lead elder rose. "We will begin by hearing the assessment of Raina's readiness from her mentors, Yulina and Farron." Yulina nodded crisply and stepped forward. "We have tested Raina extensively. She has shown competence in understanding our codes and traditions, adequate skill in dispute resolution, and a willingness to engage in diplomatic processes. While she lacks the polish that might come from a lifetime of grooming for this role, she has proven herself teachable, determined, and sincere." Farron took over with a measured tone. "She passes our academic standards. Whether she has the emotional fortitude for the Luna's position in the long term remains to be seen, but we find no reason, based on knowledge or capability, to bar her from the Pratt role." A ripple of subdued conversation crossed the hall. Alesia's father looked unconvinced, shaking his head slightly, but the elders' expressions remained impassive. The lead elder thanked Yulina and Farron, then continued. "Next, we must evaluate the pack's broader sentiment and Cedric's performance as Alpha during this trial. Did the territory suffer from the scandal, or has Cedric proven he can unite us despite the controversy?" A second elder, known for overseeing pack stability, spoke up. The moon cycle following the ceremony's collapse was challenging. Some families remain resentful, feeling misled. However, Cedric's efforts to maintain our border security, to mediate disputes, and to uphold trade agreements have been consistent. We received no credible reports of negligence in leadership, while tensions persist. There is no undeniable evidence that the pack's core functions suffered under his guidance. Many, though not all, appear willing to follow him as alpha. Cedric remained poised, betraying none of the turmoil Raina knew churned inside him. She sensed a stir among the onlookers, some grudgingly acknowledging that stability had not, in fact, collapsed. Yet a current of uncertainty still lingered. So much hinged on how the elders weighed intangible factors, like tradition, heartbreak, and the spirit of werewolf custom. Then, we arrive at the heart of the matter, the lead elder said solemnly. A mate bond was declared, overshadowing a previous promise. That bond, if genuine, should be honored. We do not question the spiritual dimension lightly. But the circumstances have sown division. Is this bond truly guided by the goddess, or is it a convenient pretext that came at Elysia's expense? As if on cue, Elysia stepped forward, trembling with emotion. I have something to say. Her voice, though quiet, filled the hall. The lead elder gave a curt nod, allowing her to speak. She turned, addressing the entire assembly. Since that humiliating night, I have wrestled with bitterness, anger, and betrayal. I was taught since childhood that my destiny was to become Luna. Raina was content to stay in the background, or so I believed. She paused, expression grim. I cannot deny my resentment, and I cannot simply shrug off the heartbreak. Raina's eyes stung with tears at the raw pain in her sister's voice. She expected Elysia to launch into a tirade demanding that the council overturn the bond. However, what came next astonished her. Elysia took a shaky breath. But as the days passed, I questioned whether the vow meant for me had ever truly belonged to me at all. If Cedric's wolf recognized Raina, and if the goddess bestowed the bond on them, then perhaps we were all misled by the illusions of an old agreement that never had spiritual foundation. I have prayed for strength to accept the possibility that the future I clung to was not mine. Her gaze flicked to Cedric, then to Raina, her voice wavering. I am not healed of my hurt. I do not yet forgive them. But I also see that forcing a union upon an alpha whose heart belongs elsewhere, would degrade our laws more than anything Raina has done. Stunned silence clung to the hall. Raina felt the tears slip down her cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Elysia's father looked wounded by his daughter's words, but Elysia pressed on, her shoulders squared as if preparing for the final blow. Therefore, she concluded softly, I do not ask this council to break Cedric's new bond. I only ask that you hold them accountable for the pain and disruption they have caused, that you ensure the pack's interests are safeguarded. I will step aside from the brass, place I believed was mine, for I no longer wish to be bound to one who can never fully love me. The hush deepened until it seemed every occupant of the hall was holding their breath. Elysia's strength in that moment was formidable, tempered by sorrow. Then, with quiet dignity, she took a step back. Raina felt fresh tears well in her eyes, overwhelmed by a mix of gratitude and guilt. She had not expected Elysia to yield so publicly. Even if it did not constitute an open embrace of Cedric and Raina's union, it removed the final voice that might have demanded a reversal. At last, the lead elder reclaimed the floor. Elysia, your words carry weight. We respect the grace you show in so difficult a position. The Council will not forget your role in forging stability beyond your personal grievance. Alesia dipped her head, avoiding Raina's eyes. The elder surveyed the room once more. Given the mentor's positive assessment of Raina's training, Cedric's maintained stability, and Alesia's withdrawal of her claim, we see no compelling reason to reject the new bond. We do, however, concur with Alesia that some form of recompense is necessary for the turmoil inflicted on the pack. After conferring with the Council, we have decided on the following. First, the union of Cedric and Raina will be recognized, and Raina will assume the title of Luna. Yet they are tasked with establishing initiatives aimed at fostering unity specifically. Outreaches to the families who felt disenfranchised by this abrupt turn of events. Second, they must formalize new alliances with any allied packs who doubt our solidarity. Finally, should their leadership falter in healing the wounds caused, the Council reserves the right to reassess this arrangement in the future. He paused, letting the pronouncement sink in. For many centuries, mate bonds were revered above all else. We will not undermine that principle today. Cedric. Raina stepped forward. Raina's breath quivered. She locked eyes with Cedric, her heart pounding in her chest as they moved to stand directly in front of the dais. The elder's face softened slightly. You have chosen a difficult path. May the goddess watch over you, and may you serve this pack with honesty, compassion, and wisdom. Do you, Cedric, pledge yourself to Raina as your Luna, respecting her counsel and upholding her station as your equal partner in leadership? Cedric spoke clearly, his voice resonant. I do. I pledge myself freely and without hesitation. The elder turned to Raina, whose palms felt clammy, her throat tight. And do you, Raina, pledge yourself to Cedric as your alpha, devoting your strength and spirit to the unity and prosperity of Silver Crest, protecting our people and upholding our values? I do, she whispered, yet somehow the sound carried in the silent hall. With all my heart. Another elder, the oldest in the group, took a carved wooden chalice and approached them. Drink, he said. This is a symbolic mixture of sacred herbs and water from our ancestral spring, used to seal the acceptance of your vow. Cedric sipped first, then passed the chalice to Raina. Its scent was earthy, laced with rosemary and a faint metallic note. She took a small sip, the bitter taste rolling over her tongue. Setting the chalice aside, she exhaled shakily. Two elders joined them, each placing a hand on the couple's shoulders. A faint hum of wolfish energy prickled across Raina's skin, a sense of the pack's ancient spiritual presence acknowledging their union. It is done, the elder proclaimed, voice resonating with finality. From this day forth, Raina is recognized as the rightful Luna of Silver Crest. Let all who have heard bear witness and give them the support they need to serve us well. A murmur of voices swept the hall. Some sounded relieved, others uncertain. Raina picked out scattered applause. Then her gaze drifted to where Alesia stood, motionless. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment. Alesia's face remained composed, though tears still threatened to spill. She gave the barest nod, an acknowledgement that Raina could not decipher as approval or resignation. Before Raina could parse it, Alesia turned and slipped out the door. The hall soon erupted in conversation, the tension replaced by a mixture of exhaled relief and awkward excitement. Raina's father approached them hesitantly. He glanced at Cedric, then at his younger daughter. His expression held pain, but also a grudging acceptance. You look tired, he murmured. This month has not been easy on any of us. She swallowed, bowing her head in shame. Father, I never wanted to hurt you, or Alesia, or the pack. This bond It was beyond my power to resist. He sighed, hugging her gently. What is done is done. Elysia may find her own path in time. As for me, I will support you if you prove yourself worthy of the title you now bear. I only ask that you do not squander the trust given to you. His words, though not brimming with warmth, offered a small island of hope. Raina nodded, tears springing to her eyes once more. I promise I will try, Father. He patted her cheek, then quietly withdrew, leaving her and Cedric to face the throng of well-wishers, uncertain supporters, and curious bystanders who came to greet them. At first, Raina felt overwhelmed, but Cedric's presence at her side provided the composure she needed to offer gracious words and a polite smile. At last, after nearly an hour of fielding anxious questions and receiving uncertain congratulations, the crowd began to thin. The ceremony concluded, and the pack filtered out to continue the day's work, some wearing thoughtful or resigned expressions. Raina and Cedric lingered in the hall, exhaling as the volume of voices receded. He touched her cheek lightly, voice filled with wonder. We did it. You are my Luna, now recognized by the council. She trembled, absorbing the reality. I can hardly believe it. Their closeness, once forbidden, now felt more deeply real. A swirl of relief mingled with the heartbreak that Elysia's tearful figure had burned into her mind. Where do we go from here? He slid an arm around her waist, guiding her outside. The sky had cleared, revealing sunshine that drenched the courtyard in a warm glow. Now, he said, we rebuild. We do what we pledged, bind the pack together, establish new alliances if needed, and prove this bond only strengthens us. It will not happen overnight, but we will stand side by side. Raina nodded, mustering resolve she scarcely felt. Yes, we must continue the healing. I hope Elysia can find some peace someday. I cannot bear thinking she might carry this sorrow forever. He bent his head, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. We will give her space. Maybe in time, she will discover a truer path for herself, free of the burden we all placed on her. They strolled through the courtyard, stepping around tumbled flower petals left from the ceremony, which the wind began to scatter. Passing a group of onlookers, Raina felt their gazes rest on her. Some nodded in respect, others seemed uncertain. Yet no one attacked or hurled accusations. She recognized the uncertain acceptance for what it was, a fragile new beginning. They left the bustle of the central village, heading for a secluded orchard path. A sense of release flickered through Raina as they reached the small clearing by the old stone well. It was in this place that Cedric had first shared his doubts, all those weeks ago. She paused, eyes drawn to the weathered stones, covered in moss and dappled sunlight. Cedric turned to face her, a gentle smile tugging at his lips. It feels like a lifetime ago, he murmured. We stood here, torn by guilt and a pull we could not deny. Now, at least, we are no longer hidden in shadows. The road ahead is still uncertain, but we walk it in the open. Raina placed her hand over his. Yes, she agreed softly. And no matter how many challenges wait, I will face them alongside you. I have learned that I am stronger than I ever believed, especially when guided by the bond we share. Their lips met in a tender, lingering kiss, the orchard around them hushed and golden in the afternoon sun. For a moment, their hearts beat in unison, free from the oppressive weight of secrecy and accusation. They did not need words to express the mixture of relief, sorrow for what was lost, and hope for what might still be gained. The hush deepened, time slowing as they savored the simple fact that they had a future as Alpha and Luna. The memory of Elysia's grief would remain a scar, and the road to genuine unity would require humility and tireless effort. But in that quiet orchard, they found a promise shining between them, one that soared beyond the bonds of arrangement or politics, rooted in the natural force that guided their wolf spirits. Eventually, they drew apart, gazing at each other with matching flickers of determination. Cedric touched Raina's face gently, as though affirming that she was truly there, truly his. "Let us start by planning a meeting with the families who resisted our union," he suggested. "We must listen to their concerns, show them we value their place in the pack. Bridge building is our next mission." Raina nodded. "Yes, and I want to reopen channels with Elysia when she is ready. Even if she cannot forgive me now, I do not want her to feel alone." A heavy sadness tugged at her, but she refused to let it overshadow the sunlight streaming around them. "No more secrets. No more lies." Cedric tucked her hand in the crook of his arm. "Then let us go, my Luna. The pack is waiting." Together, they walked out of the orchard, stepping back onto the path that led to the heart of Silver Crest. Their eyes flickered with an unspoken Vuta serve, to mend, and to honor the bond the moon goddess had woven between them. Whispers followed them as they returned to the village, some still skeptical, others newly hopeful. But Raina and Cedric continued forward, side by side, guided by the promise of a love too strong to be denied, and the unwavering resolve to shape a better future for the pack that, at long last, recognized them as Alpha Maestra. And Luna,